Hello, thank you for joining me today in Staffordshire, the land of the oatcake and potteries. In this video we're going to be following the Biddulph Valley Way, Route 55 from Stoke-on-Trent up to Congleton. We're starting our journey in Birches Head, next to the Birches Head Academy. There's a small car park here which allows you to park if you need to drive here. And also Route 550 connects to Route 55 here if you want to cycle here. From here we're going to cycle north up Route 55 through Stoke-on-Trent, onto Biddulph, and then finally onto our final destination of Congleton. This route is about 10 miles long, so let's get going and make our way down this lovely smooth tarmac, which runs down the side of Birches Head Academy. Next to the car park where we started, you might have noticed the level crossing. And as we travel up this first part of Route 55, you'll notice in the woods on the right that the rails of a disused railway line are still here. The railway in question was the Biddulph Valley Line, which ran from Stoke-on-Trent to Congleton, giving this part of the National Cycle Route 55 its name, the Biddulph Valley Way. As we continue along the smooth tarmac, which I was very grateful for being on my road bike, we pass the Repington Road Park, and here the tracks disappear and we actually move on to the trackbed itself. From this spot another line used to branch off from here and make its way up to Leek. This is also disused, but having a look on Google Maps, a lot of the rails are actually still in place and nothing is built across the trackbed. There's also currently a feasibility study underway to see whether it'd be worth reopening this section of line from Leek to Stoke-on-Trent. If that were to be the case, we would lose the first mile or so of the Biddulph Valley Way between Birches Valley and Repington Road, as this section would be used to connect the line to Stoke-on-Trent station. As we carry on up Biddulph Valley Way, we go under Milton Road, and the path surface does deteriorate a little bit. You can see it gets quite muddy, and you can probably tell from the footage it's a little bit bumpy as well. It wasn't the most pleasant thing on my road bike, as many tree roots have got under the path here and lifted up the surface quite a bit. This carries on as we head around Holden Pools. This pretty lake lies to the south of the A53, the main road between Stoke and Leek. It's used as a fishing lake, and there is parking next to it, so if you wanted to start the route from here, that would be a great place to park. I did have a look to see if there's any information on whether this used to be a gravel pit or something else, but I couldn't see anything. So if you know, please let me know in the comments. We continue our journey by heading under the A53 and carry on along the nicely tarmac path that runs alongside the Ford Green Brook as we continue along the old route of the Biddulph Valley Line. This line was built by the North Staffordshire Railway Company, and it was opened in 1860. Its main purpose was to transport coal from the abundant North Staffordshire coalfields up to Congleton, to Brunswick Wharf, and then from Brunswick Wharf the trains would run back to Stoke-on-Trent filled with sand. We next come to Ford Green Road, which we need to cross using the crossing. No sign of a bridge here, so I'm assuming this was a level crossing while the railway was in operation. One thing to note is that on the other side of this crossing is one of these barriers that's going to be a problem to anybody that's not on a standard bicycle. So if you're pulling a trailer or something like that, just beware. On the Whitfield Valley Greenway sign, there is quite an interesting map of the National Cycle Network with a little description, which is quite worth taking a look at. From here we move into the Whitfield Valley Nature Reserve. Quite a pleasant area to cycle in, with a few pools and some open countryside. The surface continues to be smooth and tarmacked, which is perfect for the road bike that I've chosen for this journey. The Nature Reserve soon gives way to the Chatterly Whitfield Heritage Country Park, with the route twisting its way up the valley. This is the site of the disused Chatterly Whitfield Colliery and its spoil heaps, today re-landscaped into this beautiful country park. No one knows exactly when coal mining began in this area, but it's said to go back as far as the 13th century and really got going in the 1800s. The owners of the colliery actually proposed that they would build the Biddulph Valley Line themselves, which pretty much forced the North Staffordshire Railway Company into building it, as they were not going to have another company getting into the railway business on their patch. From here we go over the little green bridge and take the clearly signposted left turn to continue up the valley, on what is one of my favourite parts of this route, a rather beautiful winding path with a perfectly tarmac surface heading up the side of the valley. This really was very pretty, and also very quiet considering this was a Sunday afternoon and the sun had come out, for possibly the first time in months. We've quite clearly left the route of the old railway here. This path is quite steep in parts and windy as it makes its way up the valley, which the trains would not have done. I believe they carried on the other side of the valley without crossing the brook in the middle. But no complaints from me. This is a beautiful section of Route 55 and the Biddulph alleyway. Eventually we come to another bridge where we need to cross back over the ford to rejoin the route of the old railway. But it's worth turning around before you do this to have a look behind you, where we get our first view of the Whitfield Colliery buildings. We then need to cross the bridge and take a right to carry on our route up Route 55. You'll see there's some nice views of the colliery again on the right as we make our way up the path. And also another interesting view as I make my way up here. Can anyone explain this? This spot here, which is now a football pitch, was the site of the old Chell sidings, which were alongside the Biddulph Valley line. Here the wagons were brought down from the Whitfield Colliery to enable them to load the trains for the Biddulph Valley line. They were then hauled back up to the colliery by horses. Chatterly Whitfield Colliery was eventually closed in 1977 and turned into a museum. The route continues to be nicely surfaced and vaguely following the route of the old railway, until we get to the bridge that comes over the A527 on the edge of Stoke-on-Trent. Here we cross over this bridge and leave Stoke, and start to make our way towards Brindley Ford. Here you can see that the surface has now changed from the smooth tarmac we had before to this fine gravel surface. I hadn't really looked too closely at the surface of the entire route before I chose my road bike to make the journey on. I looked at the start and saw it was tarmac and just sort of assumed it would be like this the whole way. Now this surface is fine for a road bike, just take it a little bit easier than usual and it's no problem at all. But I did worry a little bit that the surface might get worse, so let's see how things go as we continue to make our way along this route towards Congleton. We next come to the village of Brindley Ford, where there used to be a bridge that crossed the road here, but that has been taken down, so we need to come down to road level and cross the road. I did have a look here to see if there's any remains or any abutments or anything, but there seems to be nothing left at all of the bridge that once stood here. The only thing I did notice was this small piece of stone. Whether that was part of the bridge or not, I'm not sure. Heading up the other side, there is a small step to negotiate as we make our way back up to the track bed. From here the surface of the path remains good, if not tarmac, as we make our way through the open countryside as we head towards Knipersley and Biddulph. As we look around, you might get a view of Macclesfield Castle on top of the hill in the distance. Although the castle might look medieval, it was actually built in 1754 as a folly on the estate of Road Hall by Randall Wilbraham. As we come to the end of this pleasant section, we need to cross Brownlees Road on the edge of Knipersley. Here the trail rises to meet the level of the road. The original railway went under the road here, under a bridge, which is still there as far as I can see, but for some reason was not included in the Biddulph Valley Way. I did stop and turn around to see if I could have a look to see what state the bridge was in, but with all the vegetation and trees I couldn't actually see the bridge itself. This section around Knipersley is actually tarmacked, which is quite nice. Although when we come to the junction with Newpool Road and go under the bridge, which still is in use there, even if the access to it is a little tight. As you can see, this is not how the original train would have come through. We then come down onto probably the worst surface of the Biddulph Valley Way that I encountered along it. It's still perfectly rideable on a road bike, no problem at all. I think it looks a little worse than it actually was on camera. It's actually quite a solid surface underneath, but there was a little bit of mud on top. As we get close to the centre of Biddulph, we cross over a small farm track called Wharf Road, and then over a small bridge where I'm assuming the farm track used to go under the bridge. But due to it being quite a small bridge, I'm guessing they've rerouted that now the railway no longer runs over here. After this crossing, the surface of the path does improve quite considerably. As we continue along this pleasant route around Biddulph, we come to where the railway intersects with Halls Road, and this was the site of the Biddulph station. On the right here you can see where the old station car park was and some of the platform, and on the left is the old station building. All the stations on the line closed in 1927 due to low usage. The line was never really designed for passenger traffic, it was mainly for the collieries of North Staffordshire to use. So it's not a surprise that it wasn't financially viable to carry on. The station here at Biddulph is actually the only one to survive, with all the others being demolished. The closure of the line to goods traffic happened in stages, but most of it was closed by 1977, in line with the demise of the local collieries. The line from Stoke-on-Trent to Milton Junction, where the line to Leek branched off this line, was actually kept open until 1988, so quite recently really in terms of railways, and that's why the tracks were still there as we followed that first piece. We leave Biddulph by heading under Mow Lane, under this bridge with original abutments but a modern span. We then head over the top of Marsh Green Lane, over what was once a level crossing. We do have these barriers here which are quite difficult to get through on anything but a normal bicycle, but there is the option here to go around the side, which is nice, which sort of makes you think, why do they have the barriers in the first place? After leaving Biddulph, we come to an extremely straight section of this trail known as the Whitemoor Local Nature Reserve, which goes on for about a mile before we reach the border of Cheshire. It's just recently been resurfaced, and even though it's not tarmac and I was on my road bike, it was still a very pleasant section to ride on. The border with Cheshire comes as we cross over the A527, the main road between Biddulph and Congleton. To the east of this section of track, there's some lovely views, with the Biddulph Brook running alongside it. The last section of the ride into Congleton really is quite pretty. You're fairly high up for a lot of the time on an embankment, but every now and again you'll get a glimpse of the Peak District on the right hand side. It really is a very pleasant section. A little further along we pass under the Macclesfield Canal. The aqueduct here is an interesting one, as you can see the stone supports either side and the iron tub in the middle which carries the canal over this section of the Biddulph alleyway. After passing under this aqueduct, it's worth taking a small detour up the steps on the left, which take us up to the canal. Opened in 1831, the canal connects Macclesfield to the Trent and Mersey Canal. That famous engineer Thomas Telford surveyed the route, and it was built in the style of many of his other canals. From up here we can also see the tall red brick viaduct that goes over the River Dane. This is part of the West Coast main line between Stoke-on-Trent and Manchester, and was completed in 1841. It has 23 arches and is a scheduled monument. The Biddulph Valley line connects to this line that we can see, but also branched off to go to our final destination of Brunswick Wharf in Congleton. As we carry on along the Biddulph Valley Way, we obviously need to go under the main line. This is another impressive viaduct, although separate to the one that we saw from the canal. We're then on the last push to make our way to our final destination in Congleton. Just before we get to Brunswick Wharf, there is a small car park that you're able to park in if you want to do the route from this side. There's a sign at the end of the route that marks the end or the start, depending which way you're going to do it, but there's nothing much exciting here, with the site of Brunswick Wharf now being occupied by the Highways Department. But it's been a beautiful ride, and it really was worth the effort to ride these 10 miles from Stoke-on-Trent here to Brunswick Wharf in Congleton. I really hope you've enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching. If you've watched it this long, I take it that you've enjoyed it and found it useful, so please do make the effort to subscribe. It will cost you nothing and help the channel massively. Till next time, take care and safe cycling. Bye bye.